cannot continue with the present economic or political compass, whichever one you call it, which is not pointing in the right direction and would definitely lead to a collapse of this nation. And the earlier we do something, the better for everybody. For my little contribution, because previous speakers have mentioned a few of the things I want to mention, for my little contribution, I would dwell on just on 3 things and then conclude from there. For me, there's 3 things we need to deal with. And issues are: number 1, issue of security. Number 2 is issue of education. And number 3 is issue of the economy, with emphasis in trying to solve our present under and unemployment. It is very critical. For security, I'm not going to make a lot of comments, but just to say that Nigeria needs to do something very quickly and drastically on our present security situation, which is questioning our corporate existence. The great number 1 job of any government in any society is to provide security of life and property. If you cannot do that, then the government does not exist. And today, what Nigeria needs most is investment from local and from foreign direct investment. But nobody is going to invest in an unsecured place. No matter how profitable it is, the investor has to be alive to enjoy his profits. So there's no need preaching that, oh, it's 20% return, 30% return. I've said it here before at the platform. I lived in England for a number of years. And I had a partner, very good man. Very good man. I'm sure Professor Ludo knows him very well, Mr. Harding. And he had a fixed deposit in a bank of about £5 million. And I was the chairman of a bank. And I said to him that we're paying him 2%. So it was only £100,000. And at that time, banks were giving interest of 20-25%. And I went to him and said, Mr. Harding, since you said you're going to give them additional £1 million, why don't you give it to me? So that I can give you maybe 15%, more than they pay for this 5. He said to me, okay, we'll go for dinner and talk about it. And he took me to dinner. And when we finished, he said to me, Peter, let me tell you, peace of mind is included in this 2%. You can keep your thoughts. That he has planned his life. That he has planned his life on this 2%. He doesn't want the 15. I can keep the 15. And that is the foreign investor you want to attract. Because he needs to have peace to enjoy his 1% and everything. And that's it. So it is critical that we know we need to provide security. The second thing I need to talk about is the issue of education. It's been repeated by previous speakers and everything. Is just to add, every empirical studies have shown today that the more you can invest in education, the better your economy and society. Countries that are doing well today are countries that have invested and continue to invest in education. It's as simple as ABC. It's not something you need. So the more you invest in education, the education investment is not an expense. It is an investment. And if you look at all the countries that want to compare us with today, you could see it. Among all the BRICS and mint countries, they all invest at least 4% of their GDP on education. Nigeria, tragically, our budget is low, yet our budget for education is even worse. If you look at all of them, if you talk about the BRICS, you talk about the Brazil, India, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And the mid nations are Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria, and Turkey. Of all these 9 countries, only Nigeria One is that our budget is low, which is a discussion for another day. Only Nigeria is where you find the budget for education below 4%. It's a sorry state that is at below 1%. I'll give you an example. China, today, with a population of 1.4 billion, their annual budget is, of course, they will be mentioned here that their GDP is about 13%, 13 trillion. Their annual budget is 3.8 trillion. Their budget for education is $590 billion. That's what China puts in education every year. More than 4% of their GDP, more than 15% of their budget. Consequently, for UNESCO, China has 95% literacy rate. The other country I'm going to use is Indonesia. Because of want of time, I want to use the best performing country in the BRICS and the best performing in the Mint. It's Indonesia. Indonesia is a country of 260 million people. Their budget is $178 billion, and they spend $40 billion on education. About 4% of their GDP, and over about 20% of their budget. Nigeria, with 200 million people, our budget is 28 billion, which is low. But even worse, our budget for education is $2 billion. It's a crisis. To even illustrate or explain it to you more, let me use a country closer home. It might not be a good example today. South Africa. South Africa, but we have to face the reality of where we find ourselves. South Africa is supposed to be the second biggest economy in Africa. The budget of annual budget of South Africa is 4 times our budget. Their budget is 110 billion, ours is 28. What is even worse, their budget for education is $17 billion. In the past 10 years, Nigerian budget for education at the federal level is 4.4 trillion. If you change it today by 305, which is the exchange rate, is $14.4 billion. So our 10 years budget in education is not up to 1 year budget of South Africa in education. And that is where we find ourselves. So we have to face that reality and invest in this critical component. The consequence is that we have 13 million out of school children and everything. Everybody will say to you, where are you going to find the money? Because that's what they always say. When it says, where are you going to find money for education? My question is, tell me any of these countries, any other country in the world that pay what we pay for subsidy of fuel. Tell me any other country. And what is the impact of the subsidy on our economy? In the past 10 years, Nigeria, like I said before, has spent 4.4 trillion on education. Let me even ask another critical component of development. When you talk about life expectancy, you talk about health, primary health. Our budget for health in the past 10 years is 2.7 trillion. Both of them is just about 7 trillion combined. And that is what we budgeted in the past 10 years. In the same period, we spent about 10 trillion for subsidy. And I can tell you, 75% to 80% of the money that is spent on subsidy is actually, let me not say what happened to the money, but all of you know. It can be better. It's misappropriation. It can be removed. If this money was spent on education and health, education would have received at least 2.5 times what was budgeted. The same thing for health. So instead of having about $15 billion for health, we would have had $37.5 billion. Instead of having $9 billion for health, we would have had 22.5. So education would have had 37.5 and health would have had 22.5. Over that. And if that money was properly utilized, I can tell you it would have impacted better on our economy today, on our per capita today, and to the country. But that money wasn't invested. You can guess what happened to that money. Or even like people say, where are you going to find the money? Recently, you saw the report that 1.6 trillion was stolen as an oil theft in 2016. And in 2017, another 1 trillion was stolen. So if you combine these two, it is 2.6 trillion, which is in 2 years, which is the amount you budgeted for health in 10 years. So where are these thieves? Let all of us go and look for them. So these are the issues that I need to bring. That is where, so because people will say, where will you find the money? To go further, let me even talk about the issue of the economy. Let me leave education. I've told you that we can fund it, we can make it better. Let's look at the economy. With emphasis, like I said, on issue of underemployment and unemployment. Everybody knows that all various studies, and I'm happy that our famous economists here, nobody can talk about those brilliant economists we have in this country today without calling Professor Sukuma Soludo and people like Bismarck. They are among the best we have. And I'm sure they know that when you talk about the economy, you must talk about the issue of underemployment and unemployment. It is the greatest contributor to building a strong economy. If people don't have job, you have terrorism, you have banditry, you have all sorts of characters. If they remove any of us of here from having a job, we are different things. It's as simple as ABC. So you have to deal with that. And when you talk about the issue of employment of any nation today, whether it's China that we are celebrating, whether it's any other country within the BRICS nation or the MINT nation, like I said before, I still use China and Indonesia to show an example. All of them, everybody knows that there's a direct connection between issue of employment creation, growth per capita, and growth of overall economy with your support for micro, small, medium entrepreneurs. Professor Gupta has said that Nigeria DNA is entrepreneurship. And I believe that. But that DNA is not being supported. What has happened is that we've abandoned this greatest engine of creation of labor, unemployment, without any support. And if we want to solve that, it is not a sophisticated thing. If you go to China today, using the example of the two countries I said before, if you go to China today, 92% of the companies are MSMEs. 92%. They produce or contribute 60% of their GDP. China GDP is 13 trillion. 60% is 7.8 trillion, which is 20 times Nigerian GDP. That's what this sector is contributing. They contribute over 60% of the entire industrial output, and they contribute in terms of jobs. They're employing over 70% of Chinese people. 800 million people are employed in China. 70% is 560 million. That is what MSMEs are doing in China. And government is aggressively supporting this sector. If you go there, you will see that overall, I will show you the disparity when I finish telling you what is happening with them and what is happening here. China today is determined to create 10 million jobs annually from 2015 to 2020. In fact, in 2018, by the first 6 months, they've created 7.2 million, which is over 40% of their target. And that's what they're doing. China has unemployment rate of 3.7%. If you go to Indonesia, which is the fastest growing in the Mint nation, it is a similar situation. 97% of the companies in Indonesia are MSMEs. And they are creating over 90% of the jobs. Indonesia, they are producing 60%, over 60% of the GDP. The GDP of Indonesia is 1.2 trillion. 60% is 7.2 trillion. It's 720 billion, which actually is twice our GDP. They have a population, as you know, of 250 million. 145 million are employed. MSMEs are producing 90% of that, which is 125 million. So you could see easily what these people are doing in other nations. And this can be done. It's not a rocket science. What are they doing? The government have a ministry of small, medium enterprises, and are supporting them. People who ask you here, where are you going to get the money? How are you going to fund it, Peter? How are you going to support them? I was a businessman in United Kingdom. Not my country, not to have anything to do with it. I came out of school, started business. My county supported me by giving me grants. The government gave me grants. In America today, in China, everywhere, government is giving people grants, support, and everything. So people say, what do we need? I said, you need aggressively support this sector to unleash what they can do in Nigeria. How do you do it? People say, oh, there's no money. We have borrowed a total of 28 trillion naira, $90 billion. If we had devoted a quarter of that, 7 trillion, $23 billion to supporting that DNA Professor Gupta mentioned. Before I go into that, let me give you an example of what I experienced when the recent conference I attended, Tony Elumelu Foundation. The CEO of that foundation, Ms. Ifeanyi Ugochukwu, said that for every entrepreneur they supported with $5,000, he created 20 jobs after 1 year. Speakers after speaker came and supported that position. Now, if we had taken away 25% of this money, $23 billion, and decide to support our entrepreneurs with grants, we would have given it to 4,600,000 entrepreneurs Assuming only 75% of them, which is 3,450,000, had created just 50% of the job. Ms. Ifeanyi has said, instead of 20, they created 10. They would have created 34,500,000 jobs. If we had 34,500,000 people employed today, we wouldn't be talking about 98 people living under poverty. It is very simple. It's not a rocket science. We would have been able to deal with this and all that. What you hear today in Nigeria is that, oh, revenue to GDP is low. Where are you going to get it? Are you going to tax people who are unemployed or businesses that are collapsing? If you want more revenue, everybody knows how you can get more revenue. Reboot your economy. Support those who are living in extreme poverty to come over this side and you get revenue. It's simple. We have today taxable adults of 20 million when it should be more. If you want more, you just support them. Eligible workforce in Nigeria is 115 million. Those who are employed are just about 75 million. So you have 40 million people that are not doing anything. Support them. So stop talking about revenue to GDP. Let's talk about how do you now get these people on this side. If the more China put people out of poverty, the more revenue they received. To show you how bad it is and what the China is doing, if you go to our banks today, the total credit of all the banks, loans they've given out, is 15.5 trillion. Out of that, 4,000 companies or thereabout have taken 13.3. Call it about 3.3 billion each. The entire SMEs, MSMEs, 35 million. The entire loan to them is 500 billion naira, which is about 3% of 15,000 each. So they cannot contribute what their counterparts in China is contributing. In China, out of overall 30 trillion debts, MSMEs control 25% of it, which is 7.5 trillion. The consequence is that if you look at their tax revenue, they do not just produce 60% of GDP or 70% of unemployment, they also contribute 50% of the tax revenue. China funds its budget from tax revenue. 80% of their budget is funded by tax revenue. 80% is about 3 trillion, and MSME provides 50% of it, which is 1.5 trillion. In Nigeria, the opposite is the case, because these people are just living from hand to mouth. This year alone, about 10 million, half of this year, 10 million accounts became not operational again in Nigeria. Because you know why? People only open account now to beg for money. So if it is shown that Nigerians withdraw money paid into the account faster than any other country in the world, because these people are just once they beg you for money, you pay it in. By the time the money comes, it's already being withdrawn, because that is what it meant for, to go and eat. And that is the crisis we face. So people tell you, oh, we want tax to GDP or this. If you want that, the more you put people out of poverty, the more revenue you get. It's a very simple thing. It's like a bank account. You cannot continue to withdraw without paying anything in. No, you have to. And that comes to what Bismarck, Soludo, everybody is saying, that the government needs to come and decide that this is where we're going to go. In conclusion, I want you to show me something. There's an advertisement from CNN I want us to listen to. That's where I'll just conclude. I want you to listen to this advert.
Excuse me, miss, who dropped this?
Oh, it's just a penny.
Just a penny? Just a penny? It all begins with the humble penny. Whether writing your first check or cashing big checks, to those at the top making their mark, closing deals round the clock. On Quest Means Business, we know every penny has power. And it's not how many you have, it's what you do with them that counts. That's the marvel of money. Quest Means Business. What a profitable hour.
There's something he said here. It's not how much you have, it's what you do with it that counts. Nigerians think they will just win lottery one day, or like, sorry, we're in a church that will pray one day and God will solve the problem. He was going to solve it. I told Pastor Pochu that I went home last time. I told my uncle, I said, I finished praying and said, through Jesus Christ, your son. My uncle told me that he has passed the son, that he needs to see the father. So that's where we are. That's where we found ourselves. Today what you hear is revenue to GDP. Can we talk about cost of governance to GDP? That is the problem. You cannot continue. Prophet Saluda has just told you how a governor, the wife had to work for them to be able to buy car. RAV4, yeah, sorry. RAV4, yeah. You could see it. That is the situation everywhere. The cost of governance in Nigeria is unacceptable. It's the most expensive anywhere in the world. Just to use another example from the same America to show you, the Nebraska is not one of the big states in America. Nebraska budget this year is $12 billion. At 305 is 3,660 billion naira. Nebraska is the only state in America where you have what you can call a single legislature. They don't have Senate, and this is the only state in America. Nebraska have 49 legislators. They are paid $12,000 each. They are part-time. $12,000 each. Nobody buys them a car. Nobody buys them anything. Nebraska budget, I've told you what it is. So they buy 600 million. The 600,000 is the entire thing they pay to their house, as salary and everything. Which you use 305 is 183 million naira. Nebraska budget is about 3 times the actual expended budget of the entire southeast and northeast. If you put these 11 states together, they are not up to 1.2 trillion. And Nebraska, so Nebraska is 3 times that. These 11 states have over 270-something House members costing over 16 billion annually for what they are doing for 183 million naira. That is the cost of our, the cost can go on and on. People tell us of stories. In France, the number 3 person had just resigned. All of you have read it and everything. Why? Because him and his wife was found in a restaurant on a Valentine's Day while he was speaker before he became minister, drinking champagne and eating lobster. Imagine in Nigeria, the French would have joined him. This is France, where they make champagne, oh. Where they make the champagne. And on a special day, Valentine's Day, so the man said, okay, let me just, here, everybody would have joined the man for the best champagne. Let's talk about cost of governance. I can tell you, having as the governor, nobody can tell me that our penny cannot do more than what it's doing today. And listen to where you have somebody who is owing a 2-month salary. He says he's owing only 12 and he wants to go again. And people are giving him an award. I watched it in TV. They said, you're owing a 2-month salary. He said, no. It's just about 11, 12. And he wants to go again. And nobody's worried. I saw one recently who said, oh, he's not owing any salary. He's only owing pension and gratuity. You saw it. That's only pension and gratuity. He's not owing salary. And he's saying that he's the best governor. And the lists are there. We are debating whether we'll buy this type of car. We're going to buy this type of house. Or like Soludo said, this appointment is this and everything. My dear people, like Soludo has said and Bismarck has said, the world today is like, I would say it's on a fast lane, but the competition dynamics have changed. It's either you change or you die. It's that simple. You cannot continue to think you can compete today in a Formula One with a Molo driver. All of you end up in a lagoon. That's simple as everything. So we must change the narrative from bottom to up. It is critical. You can change this economy, can do anything with it. But my dear people, we have no other country except this one, and we must do something about it, or it will consume all of us. Thank you, and God bless.